السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. All praise is due to Allah. We seek His help and His forgiveness. Whomever Allah guides, no one can misguide. And whomever Allah leaves to go astray, no one can guide. I bear witness that there is no God except Allah and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His final messenger. My dear beloved brothers and sisters, there is no doubt that Islamophobia has been increasing since the Israeli war on Gaza. And this has a tremendous impact on Muslims in America and in the West in general. My dear brothers and sisters, there are two incidents that happened recently that can also add fuel to the fire. So I wanted to talk about these two, inshallah, and talk about what we Muslims can do in order to do our best to prevent Islamophobia from increasing. My dear brothers and sisters, we all heard of the New Orleans attacks. First of all, our condolences go to the families of the victims. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant the families patience. Second of all, we need to understand, and we all know that Islam and the Quran and our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us to be respectful and to be merciful and to be kind to everyone around us. The Prophet ﷺ told us whoever hurts a peaceful non-Muslim, a non-Muslim who's not trying to kill me, a non-Muslim who's not trying to drive me out of my home. If I ever hurt a non-Muslim, whether in a Muslim country or in a non-Muslim country, that I'm hurting the Prophet ﷺ himself. So Islam, of course, does not teach terrorism, does not teach any of the things that the media is claiming about that. And if we look at the man who committed these terrorist attacks, this man, he was born Muslim, but he left Islam. If you read the details that they gave about this man, he left Islam for the majority of his life. And even when he came back to Islam, he was not involved with any masjid. There was a very close masjid to where he lived, but he did not even go to that masjid. The people at the masjid say, we never seen him. And the FBI apparently found a Quran and a Bible in his house. So the claim is that he was self-radicalized. They do not have any connection between him and any masjid, any connection between him and any Islamic organization. They claim he was radicalized by ISIS because of the flag that they found with him. And of course, you know that we Muslims are against ISIS, and Muslims are the major victims of ISIS itself. Even the cousin of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu anhu, one of the greatest Muslims, he was assassinated by the same group that we call al-Khawarij, which is known today as ISIS. So this man, did not have any knowledge of Islam, was not a Muslim for the majority of his life. He had a Quran and a Bible, did not have any association with the masjid or the Muslims. In the video he recorded, he said that he was going to kill his family first. Does Islam teach us to kill our families? Of course not. So of course, my dear brothers and sisters, we condemn such attacks. This has nothing to do with Islam or true Muslims. My dear brothers and sisters, if we look at statistics, and this is very important, and I would like to say thank you to Brother Namir for sharing this statistic with me. According to the FBI, after 9/11 until a few years ago, the number of terrorists, all kinds of terrorist attacks done or committed by all kinds of people, has caused the murder of about 190,000 people in America. Out of that 190,000, only 37 of the victims were killed by people who claim to be Muslims, which is 0.01% of the terrorist attacks or the victims of the terrorist attacks that happened in the United States. This is a very important thing to remember, so that when you're talking to your classmates, to your co-workers, to anyone who's asking about Islam, or anyone who attacks Islam on social media and calling it a terrorist religion, you have the statistics in your mind. According to the FBI, after 9/11, up to a few years ago, only 0.01% of the victims of terrorist attacks were caused by Muslims or people who claim to be Muslims. But if you look at the media, if you look at how this is represented, we feel, you yourself, me, myself, I feel that it seems that Islam and terrorism are the only religion that promotes terrorism is Islam. That's what the media makes it look like. And according to a study that was conducted in Georgia State University, the reason for that is that when an attack happens by a person claiming to be Muslim, the media coverage is 357% more than if the attack was committed by someone of any other religion or any other group affiliation. So that's why they make it seem that only Islam and only Muslims are the one who are committing these acts of terrorism, my dear brothers and sisters. According to a white non-Muslim American political scientist, all the terrorist organizations in the entire world who claim to be Muslims, their numbers amount to only less than 1% of the Muslim population. And guess who is the primary victim of the attacks of these terrorist groups? Muslims themselves. So Muslims are the primary victim of the terrorist groups who claim to be motivated by Islam and the Quran. These are some things that we need to educate others about, my dear brothers and sisters. These are very important things. If we leave Islamophobia increasing and unchecked, this will cause a lot of harm to us. If you remember in July in 2024, there was an unfortunate and a terrible, horrific crime that happened against 3 children, who were at a dance class in the UK. A man stabbed these 3 kids to death. And subhanAllah, someone spread some information, misinformation to be exact, that the perpetrator was a Muslim. So a lot of riots happened in the UK. They started attacking mosques, they started attacking property of Muslims, injured a lot of Muslims. And subhanAllah, the person who committed the stabbing was not even Muslim. He was a Christian. But because someone spread some misinformation and people just regurgitated this misinformation, they started causing harm to the Muslim community. And Elon Musk was one of the people who was adding fuel to the fire. When this incident happened, he posts on his Twitter, and he has like 211 million followers or something like that. He posts on his Twitter that civil war is inevitable. What kind of rhetoric is that? This tells us the kind of mentality, wallahi subhanAllah, this tells me that this person is completely ignorant, uneducated, racist, and bigot. And this was not the only incident, my dear brothers and sisters. So when these people started attacking the Muslims and hurting them and destroying their properties in masjid, all because of a piece of misinformation, now what is our role? What can we do to prevent that from happening here? Because this could happen to us, my dear brothers and sisters. I want you to think about it. There is about 2 billion Muslims, my dear brothers and sisters. 2 billion Muslims in the world. Imagine if we were bigots, if we were racist, if we were actually taught to be terrorists. Can you imagine how many people would be dead by now? You know, when the September 11 attacks happened, I was in middle school. I remember I was in my aunt's house. And growing up in Egypt, all I see on the news is that Israel is committing atrocities, murdering the Palestinians, and all of these things. So as a teenager, when I saw the attacks happening, and I was uneducated, I was happy. But subhanAllah, immediately the Muslim scholars started talking on television and on radio and everywhere, telling us that what is happening is an act of terrorism that has nothing to do with Islam, that our Prophet ﷺ taught us that we do not attack peaceful people, peaceful civilians who are living side by side with us, whether in a Muslim country or a non-Muslim country. So my understanding started to shift. I started to learn. And this is because of our scholars, my dear brothers and sisters. SubhanAllah, one day, I was teaching a group of youth here in America. And I was telling them I wanted to write down everything that we can do in order to help our Palestinian brothers and sisters. What is it that we can do to help the Palestinian cause? And they all wrote down, they didn't write their names. All of them wrote down the solutions to the Palestinian issue. And what we Muslims can do to help our brothers and sisters in Palestine. So one of them said something very interesting. So I said, whose paper is that? And he raised his hand. And I took him outside. And I started talking to him. He wrote on his piece of paper, first solution is this, second solution is that, third solution is this. And the last solution was that we carry weapons eventually to fight against the people who live with us, who are against what we believe in. So I told them, this is something that we never resort to. The Prophet ﷺ didn't teach us that. The Prophet taught us to be very kind and righteous when we're treating peaceful non-Muslims who are living side by side with us. So this is education, my dear brothers. This is the importance of education. But when you have someone who's uneducated like Elon Musk, and he picks up some fake news, some pieces of misinformation from here and there, and he starts adding fuel to the fire, he causes a lot of harm to innocent people living in the UK, and soon will happen to people living in the US. My dear brothers and sisters, we Muslims, have we ever done something similar? When the person attacked, the white Christian person attacked a group of Muslims in a masjid in New Zealand and killed about 50 Muslims. And on his rifle, he wrote the name of the city which Elon Musk was talking about, in which like some child grooming was happening, which is the second point I'll talk about. So have we ever came out as Muslims and we said, this man was Christian, so all Christians are terrorists, or Christianity is to blame for all that happened? Of course we didn't do that. Even when I talk about Christmas, when I talk about Prophet Isa ﷺ and say that we should not be doing what they're doing, our beliefs are different, their beliefs are harming us and all of this, I say, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran to treat them in the kindest way possible. Al-birr, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين. And then he says, أن تبروهم. The word birr is used with our parents. بر الوالدين. That's because I was educated by the best of mankind, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who taught us to be merciful, who taught us to not be racist, who taught us to not be bigots, who taught us to be just and fair to everyone, whether Muslims or non-Muslims. My dear brothers and sisters, the second issue that they are raising, Elon Musk and Ben Shapiro, is the child grooming that happened 13 years ago in UK. And they're trying to put the emphasis on the Muslims or the Pakistanis who did this. And according to Statistical, of course this is a heinous crime. Whether the person is committing is Pakistani, Egyptian, white, brown, it's a heinous crime. Islam doesn't support that. Islam actually asks for the full punishment to be applied to these perpetrators. So he's trying to blame the Muslims and the Pakistanis for this incident. And subhanAllah, the statistics that came out from the UK, they showed that 83% of child grooming crimes, they were actually committed by white people. and only 7% were committed by Asians, and 2% of those were Pakistani. But why is he pointing the finger? And this is not the first thing he's doing. There's another incident that also happened years ago. A Pakistani young man was attacked in a bar by a non-Muslim, and out of revenge, he picks a random white young man, he kidnaps him with a group of his friends, and they torture and kill the kid. And then they run away to Pakistan. So the prime minister, the Muslim first minister of what's the country called? Next to the UK, Scotland. Thank you. The prime minister, the former prime minister of Scotland, he calls Elon Musk out on that, and he says that it was a Pakistani member of the parliament who went to Pakistan in order to bring these perpetrators in order to face justice and go to prison for the rest of their lives. So why are you singling out only? And this man, he can be the most dangerous man on the planet right now because of the number of people that follow him on Twitter. 211 million people. He supported Donald Trump, and people attribute the success of Donald Trump to him. So think of the amount of influence that this man can have. So he's blaming the Muslims. Him and Ben Shapira, a very famous Jewish man also, is blaming the Muslims for the grooming, for all of this, even though it's a very small percentage compared to the white people. If we look at what is happening in Israel, according to CBS News, a lot of people are escaping from America. Pedophiles who want to escape being punished in America, they flee. And guess which country they go to? Israel. According to the Israeli Times, the Times of Israel, more than 60 people accused of child sex abuse have escaped to Israel since 2014. And there is a sect of Judaism in Guatemala that has been abusing 160 children. You can look it up, it's also on CBS News. 160 children have been rescued by the authorities from these people, a sect of Judaism who has been doing rape, child pregnancy, and all of these crimes. And another report, according to CBS News and Al Jazeera, protesters in Israel were protesting the right to rape Palestinian prisoners. Have you ever seen me or any scholar doing what Elon Musk is doing, coming out and speaking and saying that all Jews are to be blamed for that? That Judaism teaches that we need to ban Jews, that civil war is inevitable? No, because we were educated by the best of mankind, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Unlike these people, unlike these racist Islamophobic bigots. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين له الحمد الحسن والثناء الجميل وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين وتابعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. My dear brothers and sisters, now we can see and we want to show the whole world the difference between someone who has been educated, who learned about the difference between overgeneralizing and the difference between pointing fingers from the best of mankind and someone who apparently did not receive any kind of education and bigotry and racism and Islamophobia on such a dangerous level. My dear brothers and sisters, what are the solutions? What can we do as Muslims? The first thing, my dear brothers and sisters, is that we integrate, we be part of this community. We have the akhlaq of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We help people around us. We show the true image of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the true image of Islam to everyone around us. It's very important that we treat our co-workers, our classmates, our neighbors in the very best way possible. Like I said before, the companion of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdullah ibn Umar or Abdullah ibn Amr, radiallahu anhu, whenever his servant slaughtered a sheep for him to eat, he would say, start with our Jewish neighbor. That's the first thing that we need to do. We stand up, we support those who are being affected by bigotry or hatred. When COVID happened, there were a lot of attacks against Asians living in America. And they came to us, they asked the Muslim community, we want a speaker at a vigil that we're holding downtown. And our masjid stepped up, mashallah. They sent me and we represented the Muslim community and we stood against the violence that was happening against Asians because of something that happened in China. When there were crimes committed against African Americans by the police, we stepped up, we stood side by side with them and we said, this is wrong, this should stop, this is injustice. When the Jewish synagogue was attacked by a Christian man, ICP stood up, the Muslim community stood up, and we helped them, and we supported them. We even did a fundraiser, and we sent them financial help. This is what a true Muslim is. When COVID happens, mashallah, some doctors for our community showed great acts of heroism, and they were, mashallah, people talked about it. We need more of this, my dear brothers and sisters. And our brothers here in this community, mashallah, doing the soup kitchen, ICP's doing the food bank. This is what a true Muslim should be doing. Help everyone around you in your capacity. It's not going to be only the administration of the masjid who's doing everything. The imam has to do things. The community has to do things. The teachers have to do things. The doctors have to do other things. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ وَلِيُنذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذَا رَجَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ. Every group of Muslims should be helping Islam in their capacity and their context wherever they are. So on the individual level, with your co-workers, with your classmates, with your neighbors, first thing that we should be doing, my dear brothers and sisters, think about what happened to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. When he decided to migrate to Habasha, Abyssinia, because of the persecution that was happening to the Muslims in Mecca, and non-Muslims named Ibn Daghna, he saw Abu Bakr leaving. He said, where are you going, Abu Bakr? And Abu Bakr said, the people are persecuting us. I have to get out of here. So Ibn Daghna, who was a non-Muslim, he said, someone like you, Abu Bakr, should not leave, and we should not let you leave. You are so valuable to our community. You help those in need, you help the weak, the sick, those who are poor. How could we let a valuable person like you leave? And he said, you can stay with me, Abu Bakr. I will protect you. So that should be how valuable you are. Look at France. We all have heard about the Islamophobic incidents happening in France and the government issuing laws against Muslims, against the hijab. What is the hijab? The covering of a head on a Muslim woman going to do to you. They ban it in schools, they ban the burkini. So because of all of these, there is something now happening in France that was reported by a non-Muslim white French professor in a book called France, Loving It but Leaving It. And he says that because of this bigotry, because of this Islamophobia perpetrated by the French government against Muslims, there has been brain drain happening in France. People, young people with great education, great skills are leaving France and going to places like the UK, like Canada, and like Dubai. And this, according to him, this is affecting the economy of France badly. You know, brain drain that happens to our countries, unfortunately. When you have a great scientist, they go because they cannot find opportunities in our countries. This is happening to France now. So we need to be people of value, like Abu Bakr, so that this community realizes how valuable we are to them. That's the first point, my dear brothers and sisters. The second point is that we need to push for education in schools. This has to be part of the curriculum. Teach our children, teach the non-Muslim children how to coexist peacefully, how that the actions of one person do not represent the actions of the entire religion. And we need to push for that to be part of the American law, that you cannot paint everyone with the same brush. If someone like Elon Musk posts something like that, that incites violence against Muslims or against any religious group for that matter, someone needs to stand up. We need strong lawyers, my dear brothers and sisters, that stand up and sue such a person so he learns a lesson and never does something like that will cause violence and bloodshed. We need to stand strong, my dear brothers and sisters. And this is the most important part. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on our side. The mother of Musa alayhi salam was nothing but a woman with a baby, and the entire country, the strongest man with the strongest army, were trying to kill her and her son. But was he able to? No. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was on their side. Don't be afraid. Be proud Muslim. One of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdullah ibn Hudhafa, and we'll end with this story inshallah. He was captured in one of the wars by the Byzantine army, and they took him to the king or the leader, and he put him in prison. And he said to him, I will give you half of my kingdom if you leave Islam. Now I want you to think about this and about the Muslims in the West who leave Islam just because they want to be part of this society, or they just want to be accepted by their classmates. The king says to him, I'll give you half of my kingdom if you leave your religion. And the companion radiallahu anhu says, by Allah, if you give me your entire kingdom, I will never leave my religion. Then he starts torturing him. He says, crucify him and throw arrows at him, but don't kill him. So they crucify him, they throw arrows at his hands and his feet, and he says to him, leave Islam, and he says, by Allah, I will never leave my deen. Then he brings a big pot full of boiling water, and he says, I will throw you into that if you do not leave your religion. As he gets closer to the pot, he starts crying. So the king says to him, you have in fact second thoughts? You want to leave your religion now? He says, no. I'm crying because I have only one soul. And by Allah, I wish I had as many souls as the number of hair I have, so that I can die as many times for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the man knows there's no way I'm going to get this man to leave his religion. So he says to him, kiss my head and I'll let you go. He gave up. So he says, I'll kiss your head on one condition. If you let all the Muslim prisoners go as well. So he says, I agree. So he kisses his head and he lets go all of the Muslim prisoners. He goes back to Umar al-Khattab. Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu kisses his head and he says, every Muslim who sees Abdullah ibn Huzafa has to kiss his head as well. See the strength, how proud he was as a Muslim. No fear in his heart whatsoever. His only regret is he has only one soul to give up for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we are as strong as that, my dear brothers and sisters, no one can harm us. Wallahi, no one can. If everyone on earth comes together to harm us, they will not be able to. So we need to be strong. A dog, a bear will not run after you unless you show fear and you start running away. But if you stand your ground, you show that you're big and tall and you make loud noise, it's not going to attack you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us understanding, protect us and protect our families. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to put an end to Islamophobia. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to help everyone around us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us al-Firdaus al-A'la and protect us from Jahannam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us al-Firdaus al-A'la with our family members and our loved ones. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم اجعل الحياة زيادة لنا في كل خير. اللهم اجعل الموت راحة لنا من كل شر. اللهم متعنا بأسماعنا وأبصارنا وقواتنا أبدا ما أبقيتنا اللهم ارزقنا الإخلاص في القول والعمل. اللهم ارزقنا الإخلاص في القول والعمل. اللهم ارزقنا الإخلاص في القول والعمل. اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في فلسطين. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في فلسطين. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في فلسطين. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان. اللهم وحد الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم وحد المسلمين وأعلِ كلمتهم. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين. اللهم اجعلنا من أصحاب الفردوس الأعلى وحرم أجسادنا على النار. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم واستغفروه يغفر لكم وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا